This is DZRJ 810 AM, and we are here, revolutions per minute, accelerating life, with Marlon Kropp, Bjorn Martinoff, and I'm Eric LeCain. Today we have a special guest,
Very special guest.
Maria Cristina Concepcion. She is the CEO and president of BPO International. And let me just turn it over to Bjorn. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about her when we say hello.
Well, I think we're going to leave that up to Christina. She's going to do a fantastic introduction of herself. Christina and I were introduced by Marife Zamora, who is a powerhouse of herself, and one day I hope to have her on the show as well. And Christina is a leader in a local BPO organization. However, she was born in the Philippines and lived in New York for close to 30 years. Right, and so Christina, give us a little bit of a background about yourself, just maybe a few words about your professional history.
This feels like a job interview. When you say, tell me about yourself in 2 seconds, and you're wondering what exactly is going to be meaningful. So I think you touched on it. I was born and raised in this country. I went to school here, but right on graduation day at the University of the Philippines.
Wow.
I got on a plane instead of going to graduation. I did graduate, let's make that clear, but I got on a plane and I went to Los Angeles first because I had a job there, and from there, but I always knew New York was where my heart was at. And a year after, I moved to New York, and I worked my way up through the dog-eat-dog world of New York. I always wanted to be in Wall Street. It always held an appeal for me. I mean, this was, yes, this will date me, but this was the 80s, so this was the height of Michael Milken, Ivan Dosky, names that, those of a certain generation know. There are firms in Wall Street that no longer exist as independent organizations. So it was the years of Solomon Brothers, and
That's when everybody was making a lot of
money, right? Kidder Peabody and all of that, and there was I don't know, there was that appeal for me of that world. So so that's how that was sort of my path to get in New York to work on Wall Street. The truth of the matter is, at that point in time, to get on the front office side of Wall Street was really a rarefied world, right, of Ivy Leaguers and what have you. At least the more interesting sort of fixed income type world. But the burgeoning world at that point in time was Wall Street technology. That was really the nascent age of Wall Street technology.
Well, it's
very early. It was very early, before the dot-com.
I was going to say, this is where like margins were enormously obscene.
Exactly. And then technology was being built and developed inside these powerhouse firms. So, Bloomberg was just sort of was starting then, really. You have Telerate, you had Bloomberg, Reuters was just getting in there. Everybody had a Quotron machine, and so that was really the beginning of the world of technology being a part of Wall Street, and that's where I was able to kind of get my foot in the door. And from then, my entire career was really Wall Street tech and ops. So it was Wall Street, but on the technology and operations side.
Beautiful. So is that the most fascinating development in Wall Street that you observed, or is there something even more fascinating?
Well, the regulation that came about later. Fascinating is, I'm not sure if one would qualify as fascinating, but certainly changed the world as we do it. It absolutely did. And then I think, the rapid descent of Wall Street in terms of what happened with the 2008 financial crisis, and watching that unfold, and actually, knowing some of the players involved and watching it unfold, I think it's kind of like watching the train wreck, and you can't help but you can't avert your eyes, and then you say, well, wait a minute, I'm in the middle of this train wreck. And
was there enough legislation after 2008?
There was too much. Oh, did I say that out loud? I think the challenge became that Wall Street became very focused on putting in measures in place to ensure it didn't happen again. And so rather than really focus on innovation, at least in the years following 2008. We're focused on how do we ensure it never happens again. So interestingly, I think in the world today, what you're seeing in financial technology, fintech, that fintech world is
Yes.
beginning to rise, right, quite rapidly.
So
quite
it's financial
dramatically.
technology for
Financial
those who haven't
technology.
heard the term.
You now have these startups creating what in my time in the 80s would have been built within your big powerhouse firms. So you have that happening, but I think sometimes Wall Street might be late to the party, but I think when they come in big. So from what I hear, they're getting involved in the technologies that, for example, blockchain technology, which is the underpinning of Bitcoin. They're building their own quasi-entrepreneurial startups.
So it's no longer centered around Wall Street. Like everything's centered around one particular place on the planet during the 80s and 90s, and now that doesn't seem to be the case.
I think the world of finance is changing. I would not disregard the influence that these firms have, but I think the world is changing.
Are they changing? Are they changing right now? I heard some rumors. There's some big things changing at the moment. Is that true?
I would think from a technology perspective, for example, they're experimenting with these underlying technologies that would make trade and clearing much easier, right? I'm hearing crazy things like same-day settlements, for example, trades. So, what they're doing is they're collaborating which was something that I was in the 80s, right? They all wanted to share technology or share their pricing information in an anonymous way. So they built consortiums to create this technology, and they're doing something very similar today with Bitcoin. So in many ways, it's not new; it's just different technology that they're getting involved in. So I think that they're certainly not stupid. Let's put it that way. They might be a little bit late, like I said, because they've had to focus on a lot of the regulatory work that they had to do to ensure that 2008 doesn't happen at least in the same shape and form. But they're going to come in big. Because they're doing the investments themselves. They're doing second round, third round funding in a lot of these startups. So it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, Wall Street from the outside looks very glamorous and fascinating. What's it like from the inside? What was your personal life like?
Oh, there's no personal life.
There's no personal life.
You were in Wall Street before the internet really was the internet.
You know what? That makes me feel Jurassic. Yes.
But it's just because we were talking earlier, because I actually was living not far from you in New York at the exact same time, and I was in the technology business, and we were basically a startup firm in the late 80s, early 90s, trying to see if we could jump on the bandwagon with everybody else. And it was just, for a while, it was like the Wild Wild West. It was chaos there.
I remember when Netscape went public.
Netscape, yes.
I remember when Netscape went public, and it was
a big deal.
It was a huge deal.
Yeah.
It was a huge deal. It was the only thing anyone could talk about, right? So, yes, curiously, so we are of that generation where the internet came upon us. We didn't, unlike Generation Z today, for which the internet, email, whatever technology is, they're born with it. They're conceived with it. You know what I mean? So it's a very different world. But yeah, so we were at the same place at similar times. So I think
it was an interesting time in that guys like me came into New York, and we had no money, and then all of a sudden we have millions and millions of dollars, and then all of a sudden we have no money.
Yeah.
So everybody, some people some friends of mine got ridiculously rich, and then right back to where we started from, like right after.
But New York loves second comings, right? I mean, there's always a second chapter, and I think those are pretty glorious stories, the second chapter. So it was an interesting time. I mean, I think we worked extremely. I mean, and I think everybody says it, like everybody works hard. But, much like lawyers in New York at that time, I mean, essentially, we work 7 days a week. You're launching products or you're building new anything new, right? There's a lot of sweat that goes into it, a lot of blood, but a lot of sweat
Yeah.
that goes into
Sounds
it.
pretty much like the consulting industry as well.
But basically, yeah, yeah. You're at the mercy of so many factors
So
that
many-
you can't
and some of them
control.
you cannot control.
Most of them,
Yeah,
most of them you
yeah,
can't.
that's so true, right? You cannot control the economy, you cannot control the exchange rate,
You can't.
you cannot control when the elections come and go.
We can't control the politics. I was about to say we can't control the politics.
Yes.
So I think the really good leaders are able to work and live and decide and make and execute even in a state of ambiguity,
That's so true.
right?
That's so true.
In a state of ambiguity,
Maybe
you have to move,
especially,
because
right?
there's nothing that's going. Information is at best imperfect.
Yeah. And to our leaders, to our listeners out there, we're going to talk a bit more about leadership, especially for women, because I'm very excited that Christina is actually the president of a women's organization with very powerful women leaders, right? And she's going to tell us a little bit more about it in a few minutes. But first, maybe give us a quick blurb on your company that you work for here in the Philippines.
So I had the good fortune when I decided that there were too many piranhas in Wall Street. That I would come back and see what was piranhas. And I said we're a few piranhas fighting over the few good jobs. And coincidentally, I spoke to a friend of mine, Carol Dominguez, who heads John Clements, and she says, "You're crazy. There's so many great jobs here." So anyway, through a series of fortunate events,
Fortunate for us and for you.
fortunate events, yeah. And a firm called Business Process Outsourcing International. And I think the interesting thing about this firm is that it was actually initially a part of SGV, Sisig Forest and Lion, which is now part of EY. And as you know, I mean, if you talk about venerable institutions in this country, that's one of them, right?
Yes.
And so I think way back in the 80s, they had created an arm, a back office, essentially to support their audit clients. So this was actually BPOI in its infancy, so to speak, and the intervening years, and with the EY acquisition, there was a need to divest of certain arms just because of the dictates of, be it Sarbanes-Oxley or whatever else. So they sold BPOI to a private equity firm. It's been run by this firm since the early 80s, about 83, 84. So it's interesting because I think our firm has been in the outsourcing business before outsourcing was a buzzword. And we've been doing this for quite a long time. Our clients, we count among our clients, the domestic arms of significant number of Fortune companies here, and certainly as well the top conglomerates in this country are our clients. And I think what's quite exciting to watch as well is how our clients have changed. I mean, in the 3 years that I've been in this organization, we see very much how globalization has impacted our clients and how their needs and the way the servicing that they need has changed dramatically in the last couple of years. So,
it sounds like BPOI has been a pioneer, if not the pioneer.
Yes,
right?
very much so. Very much so. I mean, BPO had not really existed, and we'd already been doing the work. I'm sure that they call it various things, and now finally we've organized a term around it. But essentially, we've been doing this for decades at this point.
Now, you have a very unique position as an insider, like a local who's left, got an outsider's perspective, and came back, right? For you, from your perspective, your very own perspective, right, with all your experiences, Wall Street, etc., United States, big business, what are the opportunities and challenges in the Philippines today, in the BPO sector, maybe, or in general?
Do we have more than an hour and a half?
You were saying back in the U.S. Wall Street was full of piranhas.
Yeah.
So, are there many piranhas here? Is it different kind of?
It's a different kind of piranha.
Yeah.
I think there are incredible opportunities here. First of all, the talent is here. Does the talent still need to be shaped? Absolutely. But there is the raw material that you can work with.
Nice. The right raw material.
It's the right raw material.
That makes a huge difference.
It makes a huge difference. I think, the challenge, I think, is really how do you get those soft skills needed to operate in the global world? I mean, because that is the differentiator.
That's so true.
That is the differentiator. The technical skills,
they're easy to
it's
teach.
easy to train. Yeah.
The soft skills are not easy to train.
Easy is relative, but you can train it, right?
Yes.
But when your gaps, for example, might be something like empathy.
Empathy is huge.
It's huge.
It's huge.
It's a big differentiator.
I spent the whole chapter in my book on empathy.
Right, and it's a big differentiator, especially in a service organization, especially in an organization where the needs of your customer are changing and more likely dictated by someone sitting somewhere in some head office in some other country. The empathy skills that you need change dramatically.
Well, it's not just in service, it's also in sales and marketing, right? It's huge.
Language, I think, changes dramatically, and I think as we train our millennials, it's that to be able to close those gaps.
You feel that empathy is a key strength of business in the Philippines?
I'm gathering my thoughts.
Say no more.
I think there is a difference between doing just what the customer wants and understanding exactly what the customer needs by understanding the problem they are really looking to solve.
Yes.
Because there is the over gratuitous, I'll do this, that, and the other, and start bending over backwards, but I think it's far more than that. I think the demand of the customer today is for us, as a service provider, to divine that which is their need even before they can articulate it.
I was just going to say
divine the problem that they are trying to solve even when they can't articulate
That's
it.
right. And I think Steve Jobs was really good at that.
Yes.
Steve Jobs was excellent at that.
You need a crystal ball.
Yeah, in a way, but I think empathy is sort of a crystal ball. It allows you to see something, and sometimes from the outside it's easier to see than from the inside.
And oftentimes you have to take a step back and in many ways profile your client, and I don't mean that in the NSA type of way, national security agency, but in a way of what's driving this customer, both personally, right, as well as the industry that they're in, right? What are the factors that are going to drive this industry 3 to 5 years later? What this person, including where did they go to school, where do they hang out? It helps create a starting point for you to engage.
Yes.
And you need that starting point to engage, because oftentimes you've got the first 2 or 3 minutes of conversation to either seal the deal or destroy it, right? Somehow, it's funny. There is that human connection, especially in a digital world.
It's true. As a consultant, we have tools to help our clients access towards empathy. Meaning, I was working 12 years ago with Samsung, the Air, like a granddaughter of Samsung, and I helped her see the customer's need from a psychological need perspective, and doing that has helped them quadruple their revenues in 2 years. Quadruple in 2 years, imagine that.
It's remarkable.
It's remarkable. They went from 2 billion to 8 billion just by looking at the customer from an emotional needs perspective, right? And that's empathy if you can do that, right?
Yeah, but sometimes, like I said, sometimes the customer really doesn't know what they want until you actually tell them or make them come up with the idea on their own, which is what one of the things that we talked about before in coaching, trying to help the client or the customer guide him in such a way that he has to come up with the idea on his own. Because if you're ramming it down his throat, sometimes they will back off, whatever.
Right, you have to. Everything is about how do you finesse it, right? And sometimes I say in my job, I feel like I'm a litigation lawyer. I'm pulling information and processing it at the same time to figure out how to approach a situation. It's never static. And I think that's kind of what makes it really interesting. As you were talking about, the customer doesn't really necessarily know what they want. I was reading this fascinating study, and of course, had I thought this would come up, I would have tried to remember the name of the psychometrician who, I believe it was for PepsiCo or Ragu. I'm not sure which brand. But, you know how once upon a time there was only one brand of tomato sauce for your spaghetti, tomato sauce, right? And suddenly there's a plethora. Within a couple of years, maybe in the late 80s, they now have chunky, super chunky with cheese, kind of chunky, spicy, whatever, right? So I think they hired this psychometrician, and they, with a focus group, said, okay, here's, I don't know, sweet and spicy or whatever it was, right? And anyway, the end result was they realized that the options that they were putting in front of their customer really weren't the options they wanted, but the customers, the focus group, just kept selecting from the two that was put in front of them because that's what was put in front of them.
Yes.
When what they actually really wanted was super chunky.
Something else.
And until they figured out a way to elicit that, which I think, again, is a very powerful skill that very few have, the elicitation skill. Until you're able to get to what that heart is and allow them to give them the words to articulate it, you'll never get there. I always say it's easier to give a customer something for them to destroy and rip apart than to give them a blank sheet of paper. If you give them something, it's easier to work with. I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like that. And then with what's left behind, begin to build off of that, as opposed to say, tell me everything you want. I don't necessarily think they will have the...
Not every customer is going to have the emotional awareness to really be present to what they need, but even think ahead of what they would like to have, right?
Right.
Very few people would have that.
And that's why it's highly
skill,
collaborative.
right?
It's
Or that
highly
awareness,
collaborative.
that presence to their own self and to their own needs. So.
And that's why I think it's highly collaborative, and it's in that engagement with the customer. If you're really listening, to then say what about, what if, and be able to make those connections. So I think it's incredibly important to be plugged in to the larger world. However one does it, whether one networks or one reads or one attends conferences, but to continuously educate yourself so that you can plug in things that you've heard or seen and connect it in whatever conversation you're having. I think that's a skill. I guess it's a synthesizing skill, really. But to be able to cobble it together, because you just don't know where the solution is going to come from. That aha moments, they're quite powerful, and oftentimes I'm not sure one knows how one gets there. But with the right skills, you're able to sort of harness that.
Which leads me to our sort of next question, our next focus. As far as being the head of a company or the leader of a company, and looking at being able to see all these skills and things that you need to be able to run a company. As a woman, let's just focus. Being a woman and being a CEO and being a president, and seeing all these different aspects of the things that you need to do in order to get your client to a different place. What is it about that you think that is the most important thing that you have experienced as being a woman and being a CEO and the leader of your company?
What is the most important skill that's brought me here?
Exactly. I mean, we were talking just about being able to lead the customer or lead the client into the right place. How did you get to where you are right now with that in mind?
A lot of people sort of lambast multitasking now. But I honestly think if you look at multitasking in a different way, which is a certain high degree of cognitive flexibility, where you're able to look at a situation and you're looking at it in 4, 5, 6 different perspectives at the same time. To me, that's been critical for me, being able to hone that, because it allows you to take a close-up view, pull back and take a longer view look around you and look at situations that are happening, you know, in the news somewhere, in, let's say in the Middle East, and saying, does that have something to do with what's going on here? Constantly looking at ripple effects. I think you have to be highly attuned, and I think you have to live constantly in a state of paranoia. And that's what gets me here, because paranoia in a good way, right? Paranoia in that knowing that what goes on around us. In this day and age, its impact is going to be felt much more quickly than we've ever anticipated. So being able to understand what's going on and being able to assess at any given point in time.
Oh yeah, because everybody knows what everybody is doing every second of the day.
Right.
I mean, before back in the 80s and 90s, where we didn't have so much of an intel about, you know, what your dog had for breakfast, but now we know every single thing that we have to do.
All right, we're about to hit a commercial break. Please listen in to very interesting information coming up, and we'll be right back.